Last class, we started talking about the news. Okay, let's practice together in a big group. Okay, the first one. Do you share interesting news stories with your friends or family?
Yes.
Kunyoung? Yes? Yes. Wow, great conversation, guys. Don't forget, expand. How do we expand? Make an opening statement. What's your opening statement? Yes, I do.
Yes, I do.
Friends.
Good. Don't forget, when we're using the present simple, okay, we can use words like 보통. I usually talk about 뭐뭐뭐. Okay? You can use that to expand. Number 2, this time, make a good answer. Okay? 시작. Did you read or listen to a news story yesterday?
No, I did.
Yes, I did. I listened to a news story yesterday.
Do you share interesting news
Yes.
stories with your friends or family?
I'm interested in world news and relations.
And what do you usually talk about?
No, I haven't.
Yes.
What about you?
What news are you interested in?
I'm interested
What about you?
in world news.
You and your partner should practice agreeing and disagreeing. Use this as a prompt, then agree or disagree about the statements. Okay? Go.
I think about real news.
Can you?
They get money.
What about government? I agree with you. I think international news stories don't affect me because international news is 어디가 멀다?
Give supporting examples.
What about you?
I don't think international news don't affect because this is world. 지구촌.
So we've got 3 different objectives for today. So by the end of class, you should be able to identify the third conditional construction. Okay, how is it made? You should also be able to discuss hypothetical situations. Situations that we're thinking about and creating. Okay? And we'll also be practicing our interviewing skills. So by the end of class, you should be able to interview someone using the third condition. Let's look at it in more detail. First, we're going to look at the construction of the if clause. We have to use if to start out. Okay? Then we're going to use the subject. So everyone say, if he, if she, if it, if they, if we, if you, if I. Okay, we're going to use if, then the subject. Now, this part is a little tricky, so please be careful. we're going to be using the past perfect. What does the perfect form mean? What does that mean, using the perfect? Perfect. Remember, we learned this before when I taught you the present perfect. What was the construction? Have plus past participle, right? Have plus past participle. We're going to do the same thing, except we're not going to use the present perfect, we're going to use the past perfect, okay? So instead of saying have been, we're going to say had been, okay? Everybody got it? So everyone say, if I had been. If I had been. If I had gone. If I had gone. Then here, we're going to use a little comma. A little, 잠깐만 기다리세요. 지금 생각하고 있어요. If I had gone. We're imagining. We're hypothesizing about the past. Okay? And how it could have been different. Then, we have this new imagined possibility that's still in the past. Okay? So everyone say, if I had gone. If I had gone. Then we need to repeat the subject. Okay? So you're going to say, I would, could, or might. Then we're going to use the present perfect. This is called the past modal form. We're going to use the modal plus have. These are the modal verbs. Then we're going to use have and the past participle. So I could have gone. Everyone say, I could have gone.
I could have gone.
If I had known.
If I had known.
I could have gone.
I could have gone.
All right? So this is the whole construction. We're going to be practicing it today, so don't worry. Now remember, the if clause, this part, can be negative or positive. So if I had or if I hadn't. This part too. We could have, we could not have. All right? So that can be negative or positive. One more time, can you repeat that?
If I
had got? I don't know which one. Which one? What do you think? Get? Got? What do you think? Yeah, we're using the past participle there, right? Yeah, past participle. Right? So what's the past participle from get? Good. So one more time.
If I had time to go
Mm-hmm.
if I could have
Trip? 여행하다? That's not trip. What's 여행하다? Travel. This is trip. You want to say travel. So, one more time.
If
Good. You could have traveled around. Good. What about you? But we're using the past perfect. Go to the past. So if I, at that time, use your friend's example. Why are you changing it? Use friends. I want to hear you do that. You said if I had friends. Good. I wouldn't have gone. Koreans say attend or listen, but in English we usually say go to school. So I wouldn't have gone to summer school. But what if you use some of your friends' example? If I had had, that makes it past. If I had had friends, we need to say it's a little strange, but we're going to say it twice. That's why I wanted you to repeat it, because it's a little difficult, because we're saying have twice. So if I had had more friends, I could have. If I had had. That one's a little tricky. Right? Can you talk about Tell me about a time you got into trouble. Okay. All right. Look at the picture. He didn't prepare. Right now, in your head, use a third conditional construction to construct a hypothetical. Okay? Think of it right now. Everybody got an idea?
He had prepared the test. He would have passed.
Good. If he had prepared, if he had studied, okay, then he could have passed. He would have done better. Something like this. All right? So, assess yourself. How did you do today on the third conditional? Got it?
Yes.
Or need more practice? Alright, if you need more practice, nothing wrong with that. But that's why I want you every day to start assessing yourself more so that you can be responsible for your learning.
What were the strengths and weaknesses in your lesson? The instruction for the lesson redesign focused on 3 key theoretical perspectives. Each of the perspectives was featured in 3 distinct elements of the class. Each phase had some respective strengths and weaknesses. In part 1 of the class, I used the information processing theory to model and demonstrate the grammatical construction of the third conditional. I think the modeling and the presentation were very successful and helped students to understand. I think one of the weaknesses, however, was the 8-minute explanation. In a 50-minute class, an 8-minute explanation can be a little bit tedious. In part 2 of the class, I gave the students a speaking activity. Here I was focusing on the socio-cultural theory. I wanted students to use their personal experiences to create hypothetical situations in the third condition that they could think about. One of the weaknesses here, however, was the slow start. The worksheet appeared a little bit complex, and perhaps it intimidated the students, as well as their unfamiliarity with the grammar. In part 3 of the class, I was asking students to interview each other using social cognitive theory. I wanted students to build knowledge together. I think one of the strengths here was the self-efficacy that the students built in activity 1. This gave them some more confidence, and the worksheet I think was a little bit easier to follow. Unfortunately, I think the one weakness here was the lack of role play. I was asking students to interview each other, and they didn't get quite as excited about the interview format as I had hoped. What prior experiences, knowledge, and skills help students succeed with this learning experience? There are a number of prior learning experiences that I think students relied on to be successful in this class. Students previously constructed knowledge of first and second conditional if clauses in previous lessons. And students were also familiar with modal verbs like would, could, should, and might. Additionally, students had a familiarity with the present perfect, that is, have plus past participle grammatical constructions. So I think students relied heavily on previously constructed knowledge. In the speaking activities, I think students are very familiar with the social aspects of my class. That is, the socio-cultural and social cognitive things that I ask them to do in class. They're familiar with their partners, they're familiar with the people that they're working with, and I think they're also familiar in interacting with me and how to manage and engage those interactions successfully.
Did students learn the concepts or skills well enough for application in new and novel situations? If not, what additional learning experiences might better support this level of application?
Actually, the class you observed is just the first of a series of 3 classes that I've prepared for the development and use of this target language, the third conditional. As such, and I think as you observed during the self-assessment, most of the students don't feel confident enough yet to be applying this grammatical construction to new and novel situations. Accordingly, I've created another series of speaking activities where the students can really build their self-efficacy and build their familiarity with this fairly complex grammatical construction.
What elements of practice need to change in order to improve student learning and participation?
Several elements of practice in classes 2 and 3 will hopefully address some of the issues that I faced in class number 1. First, I made an information processing theory model that really defines the relationship between the first, second, and third conditional grammatical constructions. This will really help the students distinguish what we did in the past from what we're doing right now in class. Additionally, I prepared a pair speaking activity that really highlights conversational links to cultural commonalities so that students can really rely on their previous cultural knowledge. Additionally, I developed a mingler activity where the students can work amongst the greater community, and this will hopefully address issues of enthusiasm and participation.
How does the theoretical perspective on learning that you used help you make sense of your instructional practices?
Targeting specific theoretical perspectives during the instruction helps me to define the specific goals of each activity and really define the relationship to the learning objectives. I find this really helpful in creating a much stronger relationship between the objectives, the instruction, the practice and the nature of the practice, and then finally to the assessment itself.
An understanding of the theories of learning provides an educator with the tools he or she needs to be effective in the classroom. It helps them to understand the context of learning, and through the process of reflection, decide how to better facilitate learning experiences. Thank you for watching and for your role in my learning experience.